Hello, and welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast. Podcast where we talk about what it means to be an alpha male, alpha males throughout history, and how to be one in today's modern society. I am your host, Michael Milito. First and foremost, I'm a Christian. I come at this from a Christian worldview, and I make no apologies for that. A little bio about me, a little bit more than I usually say because it pertains to today's episode. Today's episode is going to be about firearms and self-defense, self-protection. So a little bit of bio as it pertains to myself in this podcast, and especially this episode. I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I am a combat veteran. I spent several years in the infantry, did a few combat tours, been to Iraq a few times. And after that, I was in the Marine Corps as an urban warfare instructor. Then I went on to work for LAPD, worked there, did some special assignments there, and then stayed in law enforcement and some other agencies for a time, did several years in law enforcement. I am currently back in the military in a different branch, and I won't say which one because I'm currently still serving. I also currently work for a federal government agency, one of those three-letter government agencies. I won't say which one because, again, I'm still currently working for them, so we'll leave that anonymous. But I do that, and I am a firearms instructor certified for them, and for the FBI, and for other three-letter government agencies, I am a certified firearms instructor. Also, NRA certified firearms instructor. Going way back to the beginning, some of my earliest memories in childhood are with guns. I grew up shooting, grew up hunting. I started competitive shooting at an early age, even before the Marine Corps. Even when I was still in high school, a teenager, I started competitive shooting. I've done competitive shooting in rifle and pistol, in archery and shotgun and black powder, the old muskets. I've competed in pretty much everything. I've won more shooting competitions than I can remember. God's been very good to me. I'm a very blessed man when it comes to shooting. I've won a couple different state-level championships, different disciplines of shooting. Like I said, anything from rifle to pistol to old-school muskets to archery. If you can shoot it, I've probably competed in it. And I hold a lot of certificates and a lot of things like that in firearms. So that's basically my background in firearms. And this podcast, if you are into guns, if you're a gun person and you're pro-gun, then hopefully this gets a deeper understanding of that and encourages you and digs into the why if you never thought about it. And if you're not a gun person, and or you know somebody that's not a gun person and you just can't get through to them, like Jesus said, no prophet has honor in his own country, so it might do better to let them listen to somebody else talk to them about guns. So if you want to share this episode, this is the Alpha Male Podcast, but women are more than welcome and invited to listen anytime. Now, one of the reasons I chose this topic, guns get a lot of play in the media and in the news, and I don't even own TV. I don't even have TV, like cable TV. I don't have one. I got rid of it several years ago. One of the best decisions ever. I don't watch the news. I don't participate in politics. I guess you'd say I'm apolitical. So if you think that because I like guns, I'm a pro right-wing rally, whatever, you'd be wrong. I'm pretty much apolitical. I put my faith in God, not in politics. But even me, not watching the news or anything, guns are always being brought up in everything. They're a hot-button issue. So the first thing I want to say is guns are just a thing. Guns are neither good nor evil. Guns are neither good nor bad. I grew up, my parents' idea of babysitting was give me a brick of 22 shells. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. But basically, walking around the woods as a young child with a loaded gun. And never did anything bad with it. Went around, shot squirrels, shot rabbits, put food on the grill. I mean, that's what was done with it. I still have some of those guns today that I had when I was a child. They've never done anything bad. They're just a tool. They're a tool like anything else. And there's a quote, and I don't know who it's from. I'd like to give him credit, but evil doesn't exist in a holster or in a gun. Evil exists in the hearts of men. The sad truth is that men have been killing each other long before there were guns. And if something ever gets invented that makes the gun obsolete, men will be killing themselves long after guns are being used. Guns are just a tool. I'd like to go ahead and read you some quotes. This first one from Sigmund Freud, not somebody you generally think of as somebody giving gun quotes, but obviously Freud was a major psychologist in which a lot of psychology is based on today, and here's what he says. A fear of weapons is a sign of retarded sexual and emotional maturity. Sigmund Freud. This next quote is from John F. Kennedy, famous Democrat. Today we need a nation of Minutemen, citizens who are not only prepared to take up arms, but citizens who regard the preservation of freedom as a basic purpose of their daily life, and who are willing and continuously work and sacrifice for that freedom. The cause of liberty, the cause of American, cannot succeed with any less effort. John F. Kennedy. This next quote, the most important of all, this is from Jesus Christ himself. It's from Luke 22:36. If you do not have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. He's telling this to his disciples. Now, I purposely chose quotes that, from a Democrat, from a psychologist, from Jesus Christ, so that you would hopefully broaden your horizons and think this is just not a thing for right-wing rednecks in a pickup truck somewhere. This is something that pertains to almost every alpha male. If you're a man, it should pertain to you. Almost always. And I say almost, I'm not going to put down the pacifist. There are plenty of, you can be a manly man and be a pacifist. Watch Hacksaw Ridge. If you decided that no matter what, you're never going to take another life, you're never going to use force to defend yourself or defend your wife or your children or anyone else, if you've made that conscious decision that you're never going to use that force, I'm not going to berate you for that. But if that's not the reason why, if you don't like guns because of some political reason or because you're afraid of them irrationally or whatever other reason, I would say that that's not a good reason. If you've chosen to be a pacifist and that's who you are, then I'm not going to berate you for that. If you're a vegetarian, you're a pacifist, you never see the need for guns, you're never think that you're going to ever want to defend your life or, more importantly, somebody else's life, I'm not going to put you down for that. But for the rest of us alpha males, you should see it as your duty as an alpha male to protect those less fortunate and weaker than you are. It should be your duty. What are some of the basic things you think of as a man as doing? As protecting. Guns help you do that. Providing, putting food on the table. Guns help you do that. Protect your fellow man. Protect women and children. Widows and orphans. Those with less strength. Those less fortunate. We're called to protect them. Guns help you do that. I know there'll be an argument that arises that, I don't need a gun, I can take care of it with my bare hands. Now listen, you heard a little bit about my background. I have quite a bit of hand-to-hand combat experience. More than the vast majority of most men. There are plenty of men with more experience than me, but I've been punched in the face more times than I can remember, and I've punched more people in the face than I can remember. I think every man should know how to use hand-to-hand combat, should be trained in that. If you listen to the Manly Skills episode, it's in there. But I don't know how good a UFC fighter you are, how good a Krav Maga you are, if some 65-year-old woman walks up and puts a full payload of double-aught buck in your chest, your martial arts days are pretty much done. Or let's picture this scenario. You're in your house late at night with your wife if you're married, or if you're not married, picture in the future you have that perfect wife you've always wanted. She loves you, she looks to you for protection. In the middle of the night, some guy breaks in with a gun, with a handgun, with a knife, with a crowbar. And his goal in life is to beat you to death and have his way with your woman. You could either A, have your hands, B, have a baseball bat, or C, have your pick of a rifle, pistol, shotgun, be well trained in it, be proficient in it, and know how to use it when that guy breaks in. Which one would you rather have? Well, if you're listening to this and it hasn't happened to you yet, you have time right now to get the resources and the skills and the training. Like I mentioned in the bio, I was in law enforcement for years. And one of the main things I always heard from a victim of a violent crime, of a property crime, one of the number one things I would always hear them say, I never thought it would happen to me. I heard it so much it almost became cliche that I didn't even pay attention to it anymore. I never thought it would happen to me. Even if they lived on a street or in a neighborhood where their neighbors had been broken into and they knew that their neighbors had been broken into and assaulted or whatever, or they knew a friend that had been raped, and they always said, I never thought that it would happen to me. As if for some reason they had some magic bubble around them that it would just never happen to them. It's just as likely to happen to you as it is anybody else. And man, I hope that you never have to raise a gun in anger at anyone. But if you do, it's the best option. If you have to protect yourself or others, right now in the time and place that we're at, a firearm is the best option for that in most situations. Like I said, every man should know hand-to-hand combat. Every man should be well versed in it, with or without a firearm. Every man should know how to use a knife well. But picture this scenario. Here's another scenario for you. Let's say you're in a movie theater with your girlfriend, with your wife, with your kids, with a bunch of friends. A bunch of friends from school, a bunch of friends from work, whatever. Now you're that alpha male. You have two terrorists break in with AK-47s, and they start indiscriminately shooting men, women, and children. This is not some off-the-wall scenario. This stuff happens. Picture that this is happening, that you're in this movie theater. It's dark. These men break in. They've got, AK-47s, and they start shooting the place up. Now, I don't know about you. Whether I have a gun or not, I don't know why I wouldn't, but let's assume that I didn't. If I didn't have a gun, I am still going to do everything I can to get that weapon away from that man. I'll rush him with my bare hands if I have to, and even if I get shot and don't even make it to him, at least those bullets went into me, and instead of another woman or child or somebody else. That's love, that you lay down your life for your fellow man. And I would do that. But wouldn't I much rather be armed? Wouldn't I have a much better chance of saving the lives of those men and women and children around me if I was armed? Of course I would. If I was armed and well-trained and knew how to shoot, wouldn't I stop a better chance of stopping that evil? And make no mistake, it is evil when people indiscriminately kill men, women, and children. That's evil. Would I not stand a better chance if I was armed? If you're being logical, if you're not letting irrational fear of guns or whatever political views get in the way, you would say absolutely. You would stand a better chance of protecting those innocent women and children if you were armed and well armed and knew how to use that weapon. Like I said, whatever situation, by the grace of God, I'll have the courage to stand up and protect others, whether I'm armed or not, but it definitely increases my chances if I'm well versed in how to use a weapon and I'm armed. And if you're listening to this in America, we have what's called the Second Amendment, but I want you to understand this. Every creature has a given right from the Creator to protect its own life. You may choose not to exercise that right, but it's a given right. It's not given to you by government. Every creature has that right. If you back the tiniest of mice in a corner and start poking it with your finger, there's a good chance you're going to get bit. It will do what it can to protect itself. How much more you, that big, strong alpha male, should have the right to protect yourself? If you're listening to this from one of the oppressive states that has really degraded and stripped away your rights, that sucks, but realize that right is given to you as a human being. It's a human right to be able to protect yourself. And as that alpha male, you ought to be able to protect not just yourself, but those around you. It's a right and a responsibility. It should be taken seriously. If you live in another country where your gun rights are lesser, where the right to protect yourself has been chipped away at, realize it's still a right. The government just says you can't use it, but it's still your right to protect yourself. It transcends politics. Here's the reality of the world that we live in. Whether you like it or not, it's the truth. Bad guys have guns. Bad guys use guns. The best tool that we have as that good, strong, morally upright alpha male to stop a bad guy with a gun is to be a good guy with a gun. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's your responsibility to protect yourself and those around you. It's a right that you have, whether you choose to exercise it or not. It's your right and your responsibility. Whether you're derelict in it or not, it's your right and responsibility as that alpha male to protect those around you. And the best way to protect from a bad guy with a gun is to be a good guy with a gun. Now, guns are not always the answer, and they're not always the best option. Like I said, every man should know how to use his hands. There have been plenty of times when I was armed, and I still took a punch. The first part of this podcast was kind of on the what of guns, what they are. They're neither good nor bad. The next part is going to be when. We talked about the why you should carry. This next part is going to be about when. Only in the gravest of circumstances should you ever consider using deadly force. Only to preserve life. As mentioned before, plenty of times where I was armed. I've pretty much been armed since I was a child. Even competing in school, we had a rifle team. I had a rifle at school. I mean, like I said, I joined the Marine Corps at 17. By the grace of God, I made my way in this world with God on my side and a Bible and a shotgun. My two most important things, walking around this world with a Bible and a gun, and God's provided for me. There's been plenty of times when I've been armed and I've gotten in a fight, and I'm not going to draw that gun. I'd much rather I've been punched in the face many times. I'd much rather get beat up and bloodied than take somebody's life. As I mentioned before, I'm a Christian. To live is Christ and to die is gain. I don't so much carry a gun all the time because I'm worried about my life. I'm really not. I don't worry about anything. God's on my side. If God's for me, who can be against me? If some crackhead pulls a knife on me in an alley and he wants my wallet, guess what? I'll give him my wallet. Whatever amount of money I have in my wallet, whatever I have in my wallet is insignificant compared to the value of a man's life. I just give him what I have. I don't care. God will give me more. I'm not worried about that. But like we talked about that scenario earlier, if I'm in a movie theater and two guys show up with weapons and start shooting men, women, and children, you better believe that gun's coming out, and all the talent and skills and strength that I have that have been given to me by God are going to be used to stop that evil. But it's only to be used in the gravest of circumstances. Defense of life. Only in the defense of life where there's a threat of serious death or bodily harm to another should it even be considered. Self-defense and defense of others. It's a quote from Theodore Roosevelt in regards to American politics and talking about apolitical. He formed his own party, the Bull Moose Party, but I won't get into history. But this applies equally to an individual as it does to a government. He said, walk softly and carry a big stick. So as we covered, only as a last resort, but we do live in a world where evil things happen. And you as that alpha male ought to be ready to protect those and those around you, those you love, and even strangers. They're all your neighbor. Protect them. Next thing, we talked in the beginning about the two reasons guns are important, and we talked mainly, we've hammered the one about security and safety. What about providing? Let's look at that. Like I said, from a very young age, I've hunted. I've hunted with many things. I've hunted with rifles and shotguns and pistols. I've hunted with bows and arrows. I've hunted with air guns. I've hunted with, I've done a lot of archery hunting, bow and arrow. I've even hunted with blowguns successfully. I've even hunted successfully with rocks. But those things for the challenge of it. You don't pick up a bow and arrow because it's easier to kill a deer. You kill up a bow and arrow because it's harder to kill a deer and you want the challenge. The most dependable way to harvest game to put food on the table is a gun. That's the world that we live in. And this time, in this place, if you want to successfully put food on the table, you use a firearm. You can take game and put food on the table and other things in other ways. And the main way we do it in today's society, as a man, you should be able to provide. As that alpha male, you should be able to provide for yourself and for those that you love, for those under your dominion, for those that you look after. You should be able to provide for them. The number one in today's society is and you should do this, you exchange your labor for money, and you go to the store and you buy food and put it on the table. And that's great, and you should be able to do that. But what if you can't do that? In any and all circumstances, you ought to be able to put food on the table. Guns let you do that better than anything else. One of the things I like to do for fun, go out into the wilderness, like the Sawtooth Wilderness in Idaho or the middle of nowhere, and I'll go out there with a Bible and a shotgun. And I've got plenty of weapons, but I choose a gun because if I need it to eat, that's the most reliable way to put food in my stomach. And you should be able to put food on the table in any and all circumstances. Are you going to feel like much of an alpha male if for some reason your family's starving and you can't put food on the table for whatever reason? You can't go to the store and just buy it? As you heard in my bio, I've been to war several times. I worked in some of the most dangerous areas in Los Angeles in law enforcement. I could use both hands to count the number of times I've had to draw a gun to defend life and use it. In combat and law enforcement, I still have fingers left over. I've had to eat several times a day, every day, my entire life. So do the math on that. Being able to eat is an important thing for anybody. And if you're that alpha male, you ought to be able to provide in any and all circumstances. And guns will let you do that better than anything else. Well, I hope that this podcast has really broadened the horizons here. And, men and alpha males, they take many forms. I don't care if you're that guy in the pickup truck, with the big mud tires rolling around with a big elephant sticker in the back of your window or whatever. That's great. And if you're a gun guy, that's great. But hopefully, you see yourself as an alpha male, as that gun is that viable option. And even if you're the, guy wearing skinny jeans with the wax in his mustache, the hipster, whatever, you should still see your role to be able to protect and provide for others as that alpha male. And guns will help you do that in today's society. That's just a reality. They help you do that better than anything else. If you're already a gun person, that's great. Hopefully, preaching to the choir, as they say. If you're not a gun person, you might be thinking, well, this all sounds great, but I didn't grow up around guns. My parents didn't use guns. My dad wasn't around to show me how to use guns or didn't use guns or whatever. Where do I get started? And it could be intimidating. Just like we talked about in the workout episode, some of my earliest memories are with guns. And I just grew up in that. And it's I don't really think about people that don't know because it's such a different world getting into it. And I'm sure that it can be intimidating. So there are firearm safety rules. Some will have 3, some will have 4. All go in the order I think that they're important, but all of them will have these first 2, no matter what organization it is. Always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. That means don't let the end of the bullet's going to come out of, the muzzle, don't let that cover anything you don't want the bullet to go into. Don't let the muzzle cover anything you're not willing to destroy. Always keep that gun pointed in the safe direction, number 1. Number 2, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Until your sights are on target and you're ready to fire, your finger never, ever, ever touches that trigger. Nothing upsets me more than when I go see a movie or a TV show or something, and I look and the guy's got the gun pointed in the air at the ground and his finger is on the trigger. They ought to do better than that. Your finger is never on the trigger until your sights are on target and you're ready to fire. It only takes a split second. You're not shaving any time off by having your finger on the trigger until your sights are on the target. The next one, treat all guns as if they're always loaded. Another one, keep the weapon on safe, which may or may not apply. A lot of guns do not have safeties. Know your target. Consider its background. Consider where you're going to shoot. Okay, but you should know these before you dive into anything gun-related. A good place to start, I was thinking about this when I was at the gym. A good place to start may not be if you have a friend or a family member that's into guns, because just because they're into guns doesn't mean they're going to be right about guns. And that doesn't, and a lot of times, like we said earlier, like Jesus said, prophet doesn't have honor in his own country. You might feel awkward going to somebody that you know, a friend of yours, and admitting that you're the inferior and you don't know something. That sometimes is hard for us. So there are a lot of professional shooting organizations that you can go to. Shooting clubs. Like I said, I'm a big competitive shooter, have been for a long, long time. You can look up some of these organizations. If you live anywhere that has any kind of population base, this would be a good place just to get started and get familiar with guns. Any kind of competitive shooting match. You can look this up, USPSA. United States Practical Shooting Association, Practical Pistol Association, I forget what it stands for, but USPSA. They'll probably have a match in your area. Or IDPA. International Defensive Pistol Association. Other organizations, Cowboy Action. If you're more into the Old West and the nostalgia type stuff. Any kind of skeet shooting or sporting clays match with shotguns. Just, if you're not familiar with the guns at all, I promise you, the guys that I don't even know where you're at, but I promise you, if you go to one of these clubs, the people will be friendly and inviting and professional, and they will know what they are doing, especially the guys in charge, the range masters, the range officers. Most of them have, they all have, but most of them have an NRA or equivalent level of training as firearm safety officers. And if you just show up as a spectator, I would almost guarantee you it's more fun to watch than most other stuff like golf or soccer or whatever. Go watch these guys shoot. Go see how emphasized they are on safety. Go kind of be around guns and get comfortable around them. I guarantee you the guys there will be friendly. They'll talk to you. They'll help you out. They'll be so thrilled that somebody that's new to guns wants to come out and learn. And if that's a good place to start. Another good place to start is if you have a good gun range. I shoot a lot. I very seldomly shoot in an indoor gun range, but if you're in a more suburban, urban area, go into your local gun range. Hopefully it's a good one. Some are better than others. But just go in there, tell them you're very new to guns. Don't even worry about shooting one or anything. Just say that you're new to guns. Ask them if they have any classes for beginners. Ask them if you can just look, watch people shooting in the gun range. Just get used to it. That's a good place to start, okay? Ask them if they can show you the basics of the common guns that are around. And the next couple episodes we'll get more into this. I wanted this to be a basic episode, and if I forgot something, I didn't forget it. I just left it out probably on purpose. I could talk an entire episode about just the history of the 9mm. Okay, so this is just a broad overview of the why and the what. The next several episodes will get into different kinds of guns and what they're used for. But you go to that basic gun range or whatever, and you say, show me the basic kinds of firearms, and can you show me how to safely handle them, to pick one up, what to do, what not to do, how to safely unload it and check that it's clear. That's a good place to start. You do that even before you ever fire a shot, you'll be more comfortable with it. So that's a good first step. Assuming you live in a area that hasn't, where your human rights haven't been whittled away, like Southern California or New York or Connecticut or somewhere like that, once you've done those first steps and you're thinking about purchasing a firearm, assuming that you're not a felon or a drug user or somebody that's prohibited on the form from owning a gun, you go into a gun store. I know a lot of people don't know this, but if you're brand new to guns, do some research. I would say, again, a good place to start, go to that gun range, especially if they let you rent guns, and rent a couple different guns and shoot them and see. And I'll get into the future episodes on different guns and where to start and what you're more geared towards, what you're looking for. But anyway, if you decide that you've chosen and you know what gun you want and you want to buy a gun, try and rent one first, rent a couple different ones, see what you like. Then you'll go in, and assuming you're not in a place with more restrictions, you go and you fill out a form, 4473. It's a gun form. It's got some basic questions. Like I said, making sure you're not a felon, a gun owner. You fill out the form. They run your background. They check to make sure you're not flagged to be a person that can't own a gun. And then you purchase the gun. And then the next step is, before you even touch the gun, I know men were bad about this, but read the manual. I've been around guns my whole life. I have more guns than I could even think about. I've shot more guns than I can remember. When I buy a new gun, I read the manual. Even if it's a gun that I already have an exact one just like it, I still read the manual just to refresh myself on it. Learn how to take it apart. Learn how to make sure that it's clear. Learn how to maintain it. You can do all this stuff before you ever fire your first shot if you're new to guns. I hope today has been a good show and has hopefully brought some new people into the world of firearms and self-protection. I look forward to the next couple shows. I'm going to get more into different subjects on guns. Like I said, God's blessed me with a great ability to shoot and ability to teach, and I'd like to pass it on as much as I can in an audio podcast. So we'll get into, handguns, a podcast, and then shotguns, a podcast, ammunition, a podcast, rifles. We'll get into all that different stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and I hope that you pass it on. Thanks for listening to the Alpha Male Podcast.